Hi, long. So, long time no see.
Yeah, indeed, nice to see you in person.
Yeah, okay, nice to meet you. Okay, okay.
It's my first meeting back.
Okay, so let me my PhD student, the professor Roman.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you.
yeah, Joshua and Patrick.
Nice to meet you.
They're yeah.
How close are you being done? When's he gonna let you out?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think it's 1:30. Does this microphone work? Can people hear me?
It doesn't sound like it's broadcasting. Oh, no, that is
Okay, let's get started. So this is I2NSF meeting, and we only have 1 hour, so hopefully that we can go through this very quickly. So some administrative stuff. Note well, I hope everybody has read it, and it's the second day, so I hope people are not, this is not a stranger to people. Here's the agenda. So we have basically discussion of some working group last call drafts, and also there are like some proponents wanting to recharter the working group. Really want to focus on the energy of the group and also the expertise we have to do the work we want to do. Here's the working group draft status. We have 3 drafts. Is finish the IESG review, right? So they are on the status of IFC ready queue, but we still miss the ref because we have some normative reference which are now ready. So yeah, it's kind of annoying in a way. I heard people have waited years for them to finish. And so we have couple of drafts need to be discussed whether we should finish the last call, send to IESG for review, or should we abandon it? So I hope this meeting we can discuss them. That's it. And then, so let's go back to the, any other questions? Want a suggestion? Any discussion? No? Then let's go to this first thing on the agenda about the consumer interface data model.
Okay, so can I take off during my speaking? Is it fine?
I think so.
Is it fine? Okay, otherwise it's hard, yeah. So hello everyone, welcome to I2NSF session. I'm very excited because we have an on-site meeting 2.5 years, right? So I'm very happy having you guys, especially Roman and our chairman, Job and Linda, and our I2NSF members. So first of all, I briefly report consumer-facing interface and registration interface young data model. So Linda, could you open the slides? Okay. So yeah, I briefly 5 minutes. So next slide, please. The basically consumer-facing interface, we got the review from some China Mobile, Ingping, Peng Ning, and Jung Soo Bak from H3, and also Security Directorate. So basically, this time we synchronize consumer-facing interface with the other NSF-facing and capability young model and monitoring, because we pass through 3 data young model, through the review and evaluation of ISG. In the meanwhile, we also updated in parallel consumer-facing interface and the registration interface. So we believe these 2 drafts are well synchronized. Next slide, please. So Yang Penglin, he is a child mobile engineer. So he think he raised some IPL licensing issue, but I resolved with my SKKU patent attorney. So now the consumer facing registration interface, the IPR declared as this is the royalty free, so anybody can use for free. So I think this is cleared. Next slide, please. And yesterday, Dr. Jung-Soo Park from Atri, he gave several comments. So I addressed last night, and I updated and I submitted version 22. I believe all his comments are cleared. Okay, next slide. Those are editorial comments. And also, security directorate, he reviewed and overall looks of, I think is fine. And then he gave one neat typo, so interruption. So we collected. Next slide, please. The second Yang model is a registration interface. This is importing capability Yang data model. So capability Yang data model is passed as RFC. So this is borrowing a major component from capability. So the only some feature registration is some access information and the performance capability Yang model are the separate one, but very short Yang data module. So I think it should be okay. Next slide, please. So the same reviewer, Yang Penglin, Mobile China, he also reviewed, he think it looks fine. So he doesn't have any objection for King Global score. Next slide. And also, actually, Mr. Yunchol Choi, he reviewed our draft. He addressed one comment about the access information. So the previously we had some transport some layer information, but and now our Yang model focus on the access in the same data center. So in that case, IP address and port number enough, because this access information for some security controller can access network security function NSF to configure. So usually netconf or lastconf are used. So which means the TCP is used. So implicitly TCP is a transport layer. So as a result, IP address and the port number for on NSF is good enough. So that's why we removed some redundant text. Next slide, please. So also the Scott security directorate. So he think our draft also ready, and he doesn't have any objection, but he has some comment. So he think there is no issue about this document. Next slide, please. Also, operations directorate Giant Mishra, she or I think Guyan gave some comment. So he or she suggested some redundant example XML. So we removed most of them. But first example is useful, I believe. So we just keep it. Other example XML we removed. Next slide, please. So next step, we got through a review from people outside the authors. So I believe also the one thing I want to say actually the hackathon is already almost 7 years. During 7 years, except one hackathon because of COVID, the happening at that time, we couldn't participate in IETF hackathon, except that. So we kept participating in I2NSF hackathon. We demonstrated, also we implement our own, also we implemented with actually people. So we have 2 implementations, and consumer-facing legislation interface, young model are well proved through last 7 years hackathon. Not 7 years, hackathon point of view, maybe 6 years. So Roman, I believe consumer-facing legislation interface young model are ready to go. Okay. Okay, so do you have some comment? Okay.
Hi, Roman Unity, responsible SEC AD. So just to clarify my understanding, you're saying consumer facing and registration interface is ready to exit the working group?
Oh,
is that the
so
where we
to
done working
direct
group
the,
last call?
yeah,
Ready for last call, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, finishing.
finished, yeah.
We started last call.
So I guess I have a little bit of a question. I was cruising the mailing list. I'm trying to understand the degree of review, for example, with the registration interface, because I see on the mailing list, 1 person commented on it.
Actually, the Peng Li, he also, China Mobile, he also thoroughly reviewed, but he couldn't find any problems. So.
Oh yeah, no, and it's great that he did. I
yeah.
just didn't see anyone else from the working group saying that they read it and reviewed it. I mean, the director reviews are great, but we asked for those. That's coming from the outside. That's not working group energy. I mean, is it possible to get more reviewers? I mean, there's folks in this room. I mean, are they committed to reviewing it and saying it's ready to publish? That's what I'm looking for. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. We need I mean, what I'm looking for is the transparency that, folks have looked at it and kind of read it. And if we could do that for both of those to get to the point that we have, I mean, this isn't a voting thing. It's not a numbers thing. We can have 3 to 5 independent people that aren't document authors, that aren't the director reviews, that say, I looked at it, and even if I don't have comments, but I looked at it and reviewed it, that would be the strong signal I'd be looking for to kind of exit working group last call.
So, the 2 young model already 7 years old. So last 6 years hackathon project. During hackathon project, people give some comment, as Susan mentioned. So I think also, young model isolation case, you can see very short young model. So I think, there is no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sue and I kind of talked about this since you kind of mentioned her. I mean, I think we have a little bit of I'm trying to focus us on the process, because the hackathon is wonderful, but the hackathon is not, unfortunately, our document process. So what we would expect, just to level set everyone from working group last call, is that we have a document, there is an author team. One would expect that the team of authors has been folding in what's happening from the working group, and they have already done everything that needs to get done. What I think gives working group, the chair's confidence, and me confidence that this is a consensus-based thing, that the people that participate in the working group put everything they needed in this document, would be for folks from the working group to positively confirm to us, we looked at it, we think it's ready to go. And we feel that there are kind of no issues. And so the hackathon thing is, I guess, great. And it's wonderful. I mean, the many years of participation has been an exemplar of how to tie things in the hackathon of the working group, but we need that experience rolled back into the working group so we can see that. So if there are artifacts from the hackathon where the working group participants are participating, that's great. But I think, again, we need a timeliness thing, which is, if it's happening 7 years ago, that wasn't the final document. So what we need is, there's a final version of the document, and the working group has looked at it, and they want it, they endorse it continuing to publication.
So you can see, security directorate and the operations directorate, they couldn't find any problems. So I think, still, 2 people reviewed, and I believe, I think good enough. So maybe somebody else, some reviewed, it will be better.
Yeah, and again, the finesse is, it's not an impeachment of the work. It's not saying it's kind of good enough. What it's really asserting is that it was developed with a consensus-based process, which means that, again, it's a product of the working group, and the working group kind of agrees. So what we need is for the working group to say, we're good with that. And again, the director reviews are great, but the director reviews are on the side of the working group. They're in addition to, because we brought them in, and we wouldn't consider them as part of the consensus process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think we will definitely solicit more people to review. them to review it. Yeah. It's just young model is really hard to review. It's like writing code, right? It's not like a Word document. People can glance through it and give comments.
Yeah, in a sense, this is the check to kind of exactly the point. Getting reviews is hard, and I fully kind of recognize that. But this is, in a sense, is the check. If we do not have enough energy to have people review the final thing, then we probably don't have enough energy to publish. And this is the check that there's consensus in the working group to do this, and there's energy to kind of finish all of that.
Okay, well, definitely.
Yeah, and the transparency kind of to the kind of comment, the transparency on the list, that's clutch, because if it's happening on the side, it's great, but we're not aware of it through the normal process. And so the mailing list is the place to document it. Thanks.
Just for full transparency, this is Diego Lopez. In some cases, I must confess, in my case, that, for example, I have reviewed the document. It seemed okay, and simply you feel like you don't have the time to. I mean, the time. I'm talking the 10 seconds to say, well, it's okay, just because you have other things that distracts you. But that's mea culpa.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to kind of get to the consensus process, but my concern in measuring that consensus, because that's what the working group chairs are doing, is the only evidence we have is the meetings and the mailing list. And so we don't have, I mean, my assessment, and I think I put this on the mailing list before, my assessment is we haven't met in a while, which again is perfectly fine. Certain working groups have a different tempo. But if you take a look at the working group mailing list from the last 2 years, 3 years, there is no discussion of the documents. It is the document authors, which is great. It is the directorate reviewers, but the working group is entirely silent on all of the edits. And so from my perspective, I can't tell that there's consensus. What I see are the document authors are being incredibly responsive to the reviews, but the working group is not at all commenting. When we were talking 2+ years, where we don't see that at all. And so on this way out, I really want to make sure that we double check the consensus, especially how long it took for some of those others, which is where this consensus kind of concern kind of came from, that maybe we don't have enough eyes on it as it exits the working group.
So I want to say one thing to Roman. So the code case Diego mentioned is hard to review. So in the past, the Tom Patch, slowly review, gave a lot of comments. Last 2 years, so we worked very hard. Actually, we worked hard in terms of fixing something. So at that time, working group people, I think it's hard to give some specific. So Tom Patch, also young doctors. So we got a lot of comments. So at moment, maybe somebody else, maybe. Also, we approved using the implementation. So I think, so if you think we need more comment, maybe we can look in post. But yeah.
Well,
so Roman, I find it interesting. I went to this open source gathering today at lunchtime. For many of the extensions in the routing area, they require two-vendor implementations, right? So there's some proposal in BGP, for example. You look at the code and then you run the code. They have test configurations so that if you can run through the test, then you are okay. Because some of the features like can be encoding so nitty-gritty details, like people don't care. Like I know the information, but I don't really care how you arrange the bit. So I wonder if maybe like data model, they should have some kind of testing. Well, we do have young doctors review it. Right. And testing to pass through it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to the general purpose thing, but kind of from my perspective, we have a working group whose only job is to make Yang modules. And so in a sense, I appreciate it's an arcane thing, but if in that case, I mean, if it's an arcane thing, that's what we brought a working group together to do, right? It should be all Yang experts with the domain expertise to kind of model in. If not, then we actually, in fact, do need outside help, which I don't know whether we need, but like what we need is review, which is the Yang experts that gathered in this room need to put eyeballs on it and said, I looked at it and I am comfortable with it, or I have feedback. So it's not so much we need comments as in we need to find issues with the document. I'm not saying that at all. What we need is an assertion of consensus, which is people have looked at it and we're comfortable with it to kind of go.
It's about the syntax and the semantics.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, all of that as well. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. I think that's good.
Okay, so we move to next topic. Yep. Okay, next one is
Um, just for the benefit of the people who are remote, please note that the Zulip or chat room appears not to be working. So I'm sending a message to the IETF.
Did you send a help request? Do you need me to send a help request?
Oh, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Jonghyun Joshua Kim from Sungkyunkwan University in Korea. Let me start my presentation. Today, I'm going to present about guideline for security policy translator in I2NSF framework. This presentation based on draft young I2NSF security policy translation version 11. Next, please. These figures show CFI and NFI structure in I2NSF framework. CFI deliver high-level policy to security controller, and NFI deliver the translated low-level policy to target NSF. Next, please. For understanding, let me introduce about the CFI. CFI is required because the web application developed by each vendor need to have standard interface specifying the data types used when the I2NSF user and security controller communicate with each other using this interface. Therefore, the CFI document specify the required information, their data type, and encoding system, so that high-level security policy can be transferred to security controller through CFI. This high-level policy can be translated into low-level security policy by the security controller. Next, please. NFI focus on the providing security policy configuration for NSFs as a low-level policy to deploy security service. Security controller delivered the translated low-level policy to NSF according to their respective security capabilities. The data model provide a generic NSF and advanced NSF, such as IPS, URI filtering. Next, please. Okay, for understanding how to connect CFI to NFI, let me introduce top-level Yang tree comparison. As you can see, this slide shows the consumer-facing interface top-level Yang tree, and this slide shows NSF-facing interface top-level Yang tree. As you can see, they have a similar structure. Next, please. Yeah, this tree is low-level Yang tree comparison. Yeah, this slide shows consumer-facing interface, low-level Yang tree, and this slide shows NSF-facing interface, low-level Yang tree. As you can see, CFI and NFI data model use the event condition action policy rule use that kind of structure. Next, please. So relationship between CFI and NFI. CFI and NFI have almost one-to-one mapping relation. The Yang tree of CFI and NFI have similar structure based on I2NSF capability Yang data model. With this characteristic, the attribute of CFI Yang module can be mapped to NFI Yang module by deterministic mapping algorithm. That is a Jiang algorithm. The value of the attributes of CFI policy XML file can be converted to those of the attributes of NFI policy XML file by deterministic finite automata. The value of the attributes of the NFI policy can be constructed into NFI policy XML file by Yang array tool that is such as Pyang bind. Next, please. This figure shows exemplary architecture of security policy translator. Security policy translator has 5 components as follows: NSF database, data model mapper, data extractor, data converter, and policy generator. Next, please. Yeah, okay, this figure shows high-level policy for SNS access blocking. Example, this high-level policy is for the blocking access to the SNS website during office hour. As you can see, the kind of high-level information must change to the low-level policy. Next, please. This figure shows the procedural policy provisioning with NSF. The high-level policy data convert to the low-level policy data in security controller, and then low-level policy delivered to the target NSF according to the capability. Next, please. So the high-level policy finally translate to those 2 low-level policy. First is low-level policy for firewall. Second one is for web filter. As you can see, that kind of in this field, employee translate to the IP version 4 network subnet, and the SNS website translate into Facebook and Instagram. Next, please. For the next step, this draft explains the relationship between CFI and NFI as guideline for security policy translation. It helps the audience to understand how to link the CFI data model and NFI data model. It suggests an exemplary architecture and procedure of security policy translator. With this draft, an implementer can design and implement it on SPT that can work in the I2NSF ecosystem. This draft is proposed as a working item in I2NSF literature. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, this is Jeong Porjong from SKKU. So this draft, I'm one of author of this draft. Let me briefly explain this motivation. So this is draft explain relationship between CFI and NFI for guideline. So without this draft, it is very hard the implementer to figure out how to translate CFI XML high-level YANG and low-level YANG based on NFI. So we focus on this relationship between 2 data YANG models, and then let the audience can understand easily how to link to each other and they implement. And also as appendix, we can suggest the exemplary architecture and procedure rather than some implementation detail, some draft Norma mentioned. So we just focus on the relationship about 2 data models. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do have questions. It seems like almost like a DNS, the name to the address, the high level name or context to the low level mapping. So with that, you will need some kind of external database to rely on, right, to do the translation. So this showing here, I didn't see it. Like for example, I want the entire group to do something, but this group information has to be represented in some kind of database, right?
Right, exactly. So could you show the some our architecture?
Which
Uh,
page? This page?
Wait, page, yeah,
2 page, please.
page number.
This is two, right?
Next, yeah. Show the database architecture.
Which eight? Like this? Okay.
Okay, yeah. So you can see we have the NSF database. So we can populate some employee information, name, and their IP address based on the DHCP, and also URL case, some SNS website case, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, like that kinds of populated into NSF database. Linda mentioned the DNS database. So we can, so actually the population of that database case are kind of current our consumer facing also we support, as I remember, Patrick, right? So we consumer face interface also dealing with the population, that kind of database entries. With those information, high level YANG XML can be easily translated into low level YANG using our procedure. Yeah. Okay.
This is Diego Lopez. A few things. I'm glad to see that you're moving the architecture to an exemplary and not such part of the text. That's good. There are a couple of things regarding. I mean, one is that brings to my mind the discussion today on the with Sue about the levels of detail. Here, probably making some consideration about extensions that can be dynamically added by the translation process would be important, because not necessarily a one-to-one mapping from the consumer face to the NSF facing, probably something possibility of adding extensions that would be more important on the side of the NSF, because the translator has some additional knowledge would be interesting. And another thing is that in the ops group, we are discussing precisely how to establish beyond this correspondence with names, etc., trying to go a little bit beyond in the connection between models and instances of the models. And when you have a model that is related to another model, how do you relate the instances, mapping, again, the same connection that are in the models, mapping them on the instances. This is something that probably we should try to consider. What I will do, because the people that are working on this are well, unless one of the authors of this series of drafts is working with me, I'll put you in contact, because I think there is a potential here to precisely apply this and enhance the translation process.
Just can you use the mic so that we're not participants? Maybe you can explain what
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick from Sungkyunh University. So basically, in our current draft, we are proposing like the relationship, right, between the two data models. We have the high-level policy, which is the CFI, and then we have the low-level policy, which is the NFI. And in these two data models, so in the NFI, we designed it to have more details, right? We have like access control list, which is imported from RFC 8519. And in that, it has like every single headers of packets from layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and so on. But in our consumer facing, we are designing for very small details that basically users without expertise on those parameters, on those packet headers, they can try to use our framework. And the purpose, so that we need a translator it's necessary, right, for our framework. And that's why we need to have this mapping between these two data models. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Roman Dinelli, wearing no hat, just as Carnegie Mellon University. I think I have two interrelated kind of questions. how do folks that are using I2NSF now bridging the gap between the two models? And then my related kind of question is that secret sauce of the implementers? I mean, do we need standardization in that mapping?
Just Diego Lopez, just as a note, we are using this in a couple of projects related with actually we are relating this with the management of supply chains and all the like. And currently what the people that are developing this are doing is using is using a process similar to this, but it's not general because the policies are very much are very much reduced and controlled. So they are a set of rules that are quite straightforward. So they are not applying this general case. That as I said before, if we consider here precisely the correspondence between the different instances of the different models and how they are related, and how the extensions could be linked. I think that would make sense. I mean, when we talk about extensions, because it's an important thing that a vendor comes with extensions and how you connect one to the others and how you connect the instances. I think we should or we could explore that space.
So one more comment is this draft explained some linkage between two models because almost one-to-one mapping, but not exactly one-to-one mapping. Patrick mentioned so certain some detail is missing in consumer-facing interface, such as users group, just the user group, right? Rather than IP version 6, IP version 4 addresses. And so those can be translated using NSF database, can be handled by that. So this document is filling that gap between consumer facing and NSF facing interfaces. Without this document, it is very hard to figure out how to link to each other because I'm editor for those data model. I'm well aware of that, but other people no idea. So translator is a very important piece of our I2NSF, and with this one, and the people can easily understand there are young models, and then they can make it. So that is the purpose of this document. Okay.
So if I'm kind of to summarize, I guess my question was primarily I'm not saying that the translation didn't need to happen. I'm asking why does that has to happen in a standardized way? And you're saying that, is it fair to say that because you could have an ecosystem of different kind of extensions, you need to kind of guide that translation because there is heterogeneity, like the models be kind of different. And so we need to provide more guidance so we can in fact do the translation? Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. So should we go to the next one?
Okay, let me start. Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Linga. I'm from Sungkyunan University from South Korea. Well, this is actually my first meeting in IETF in person. I've attended online previously. So can you put me on the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, so basically, I want to talk to you about the new draft that we are proposing, which is previously we called it application interface, and we received a comment that this name can be confusing, and because for that reason we changed it into analytics analytics interface. That it's the naming itself is much more clearer, and you can clearly know what's the meaning of analytics interfaces. Okay, next slide, please. So yeah, this is the updated frameworks. Basically, we added a component and another interface. In the previous versions, we called it application. Now, for next slide, please. Yes, now we call it analytics interface. As you can see, it's much more easier to understand that what's the purpose of it instead of saying it's an application, right? Now it's analytics interface. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so in here now we added a new component, which is the I2NSF analyzer. This analyzer purpose is we collect monitoring data from those NSFs that's working. They collect all of the important information, all of the data, and try to analyze it. And the analysis, we can use machine learnings or anything, but it's not, well, it's not in the scope of our draft. But basically, we needed some kind of entity that analyze those information, and then we can provide some more useful information from those data. Next slide, please. Okay, so to provide those analytics data, we propose this analytics interface. So this interface is between the security controller and the analyzer. So after the I2NSF analyzer analyze those monitoring data, it will try to provide a new information or reconfigurations, like how to solve what's issue in the current network, right? So we propose this analytics interface so that that analyzer can send information to the security controller. Next slide, please. So yeah, why do we need a I2NSF analytics interface? So as you know, all of our servers networks they're running 24/7, and you don't know what's going to happen during the time, right? And anyone can attack your servers, and it can goes bad immediately. So it is very important that we have some sort of analyzers that's what's happening in our system right now. So the analyzer can collect those data and those monitoring data, and then we basically try to make sure everything is okay. And then by analyzing those activity and performance, basically we can create a closed loop security control. This is used so that we can enhance the network security through the analysis of those monitoring data. And by adding the two components, and basically one component and one interface, we allow what we call security management automation. And this is supports automatic adaptation, and also we can support adaptability, basically. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this analytics interface, there are two roles that we needed to provide an enhancement of this network security. The first one is the policy reconfiguration. Second one is the feedback information. Basically, on both of these roles, we provided three fields, which is the NSF name, the problems, which is the issue that we are having currently, and then we have also the solutions. What is the possible solutions for the issue that we are having currently? Next slide, please. So the first one is the policy configuration. The purpose of this policy configuration is basically when we are having an NSF that's working all the time, and then we collect those information, what's going on, what is happening in our network. And then when we analyze those data, and then we can provide some sort of a reconfiguration or a configuration, because we want to enhance what's happening in the network, right? So if we find out something is terribly going on, then we need to reconfigure those configurations on those NSFs. So to do that, we created some sort of a closed loop that is basically giving a feedback over and over so that our network is safe. Okay, next slide, please. And we have a feedback information, which is a different kind of information that's delivered from the analyzer. In this case, it's not really a configuration. For example, if in our network system, we have some hardware failure or any hardware overloaded. So in this kind of things, we cannot handle it with just a security policy, right? So we need to have another solutions. And in this case, those solutions may or may not be used, and we need to report them to the users, and or maybe query something extra to the developer management system. So that is what a feedback information is. Next slide, please. So yeah, the next step for this draft is analytics interface is an interface for security management automation. So with this new interface, we created a closed loop security control that improve and enhance the security policy and also the network security itself. And in the Young module, this is based on the NSF facing interface and monitoring interface. And also this draft facilitates both a report and query for security management automation. And we want to propose this draft as a working group item in the next I2NSF rechartering. Thank you.
I do have a question for this, just curious. So the interface, the information going through this interface, would that be same as NSF or consumer-based interface for like reconfiguration? If you want to reconfigure some policies, don't you use the subset of the consumer-based interface or NSF?
Actually, my name is Jaehoon Porojong, SKKU. So this analytics interface import NSF face interface and the monitoring data model Young module. So the thing is, so it identify NSF name and also some problem and the solution. So that is a kind of wrapper. So it just the user. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, we are the user, the existing NSF facing and monitoring interface. But not exactly same. So that's why we propose. And also this purpose is we provide the closed loop security control. So I think that is additional required piece. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. My name is George Galajans from Hawaii. Just a question on the feedback that you were proposing. Is this a synchronous feedback or asynchronous? And if it's synchronous, what is the periodicity of getting information for monitoring? Do you understand the question?
Can you explain a bit more what synchronous and asynchronous means?
Yeah, synchronous is when you actually periodically collect information. So, you know, a period of time. Or asynchronous, when something happens, when an event happens, then you collect information.
I see. So this collect information is based on our monitoring, and our monitoring is based on a notification based or report based, right? So when something happens, we're going to report it to the analyzer. Analyzer will realize what's happening, and then we're going to give some sort of reconfiguration to handle it, right? Yeah, that's asynchronous.
Thank you.
Hi, Roman Danilio, Carnegie Mellon University, no hat. Could you, in the kind of the decomposition of what's in the data model, there was this box of problem and solution. I'm looking in the draft, and I apologize, I didn't read it, so I'm as smart as scrolling through it and kind of looking kind of at your slides. Can you explain kind of a little more about what gets put in that problem and kind of solution? I guess I'm not exactly kind of following given the level of specificity in kind of the data model. It seems kind of high level and selective. Kind of can you talk me through that?
So, okay, but we're talking about a problem and a solution. So this problem is basically those monitoring data, right? When for example, in your network, you get some DDoS attack. There is a problem, right? That type is something we call the problem here that we need to be solved. And then the solution is maybe some sort of reconfiguration. We ask some DDoS mitigator to block a certain packet from someone, like from some IP, right? So that is the solutions, right? So the problem is just what's going on in the network. The solution is it can be a reconfiguration, or we can require some sort of things here.
So thanks for that kind of specific example. And since you mentioned a denial of service attack, you would say the problem is I have this attack source address on this port.
Yes.
And that would be the example of a problem. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
It would be nice if you can add those examples into the draft.
Uh,
I had the same question as Roman. Like,
Yeah, actually, we have some example, but I didn't put it in the slides. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
So the stuttering quickly, I will.
there's another one.
Oh, no,
BGP one.
BGP, okay.
Yeah.
Susan.
Yeah. Sue, are you there?
Am I hearable?
Yes, yes, we can hear you very well.
I'm not hearing you, Linda, so I'm going to trust that I'm going to, you'll need to tell me if I can't be heard. Someone at the main mic, I can't hear Linda's mic remotely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hope that you all hear me by the chat window. Look, we're trying to finish.
Linda, if you can't hear, I'm sorry, Sue, if you can't hear Linda's microphone, I'm speaking from the microphone from the floor. We can hear you loud and clear, so just proceed.
Okay, that's great. I couldn't hear Linda's. Could be the connection. I'm in an airport. I'm sorry. Look, guys, we're the BGP model is trying to finish a few of its last pieces, and we're trying to look at some things that are working. Linda, go to the next slide. Between two BGP peers. So this is the model, and what we have is a secure session container inside of the BGP peers. That would make a lot of sense. The options currently we have are AO, MD5, and IPsec. You can see with the discussion down at the bottom why I need help. I had a long talk with Mahesh and who also chairs NetConf. So here you find that we really need help to find out if we've got the right grouping. Paul has suggested a few things, but this is why. I don't know if we have right now we just put in a string for security association name, but I really need to find which group is going to help us with that. Next slide. You notice the other ones have keychains. So one of the things is you want to make sure that you can have a security association, perhaps, I don't know, operationally, people seem to change their security association, some very rarely, but they also want operational state. Okay, so that's my need. What I don't know is if it's I2NSF or if it's IPsec. Go ahead now to Paul's slides that he helped me. This is Paul's suggestion. Go ahead, Linda. Next slide. Why do we need IPsec? You notice that it's within a trusted cloud because many of them are being within the network provider. It could be across a physically secure private link, and it could be across an exchange point, which we'll call an open internet. So the IPsec can be used any of those cases. What's good about it is you really need to have some sort of monitoring. So this is a case where you're seeing I2NSF work in the model I always envisioned, and that's where the I2NSF may be integral parts inside of a larger combinatory box, routers and security devices. Again, this is all sort of, please help. If I'm in the wrong place, send me someplace else. But send me someplace I can get help. Next slide. Paul suggests, and I agree, that it's this building blocks that I2NSF is very useful because we have some of the same things inside of routing places. You have something that's controlling the security, be it MD5 or be it AO using keychains, something that watches it and gets operational state, and then something that is a configuration backend, which is really the development management system, and a user, which in this case oftentimes is the network. You can see that we have multiple gateways, and that the 5G systems will probably grow in that. Next slide, Linda. And again, I'm going to try to be brief. So here's where Paul was suggesting kindly to me that RFC 9061 might be used. That's what I thought initially. I had debates with my co-authors because Mahesh's and Jeff are familiar with the keychains, but we couldn't get to a solid point. So Paul is right. You can either run IKE or IKELess. You need to question, but what I really need a discussion set of partners to ask a whole bunch of questions, and this is a bid. Am I at the right place? I pointed my co-authors at 9061 to begin with, but we ended up with some debate. So next slide, Linda. And then I think I'm done. I need to find out, am I in the right place to ask the question? If we go from there, the question is whether we need to extend it or whether I just don't understand it. And this is another one of those cases where we're pushing at models outside of the routing world because we're not sure how to plug into them, but we don't want to invent our own, right? The idea is you need to glue it to the whole system. So I know that you need to have a discussion, and I'm glad to take it to the list. I just hope that I could get some feedback. And Linda, I'll turn my mic off.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello, this is Diego. Oh, I see Rafa is there as well. So well, I'll wait. Rafa knows much better than me.
No. Go ahead, Neil. Go ahead, no problem.
Well, no, simply I wanted simply to remark. I think this could be an interesting approach. As long as we get the trust model right. We should not forget is that we're talking about BGP. Wait a second, I'm going to take them. We're talking about BGP reflectors that are in different domains and that are going to be submitted to a common controller. And that has trust implications because is that the autonomous systems are going to put trust on a common device that is somewhere. And we have to be careful about this. My understanding of RFC 9061 when it was conceived was precisely for highly centralized environments in which enterprises that were willing to connect their branches to central offices or the branches is among them, etc. This is a totally different beast, I would say, because it's and the trust model. We have to understand well the trust model. If we get the trust model right, well, why not? One of the interesting conditions of this is that it would support whatever the kind of bilateral agreements between the different BGP domains. I mean, as long as you have your BGP domain, I have mine, we agree that we trust Paul's controller, we are happy. But again, it can be tricky. The trust model can be very tricky, and we have to think about it. But I must say, I find it appealing. That's from a touching base, just touching base.
Thank you, Diego. I may send you some questions on the background. I realize the trust model is in some cases within a common administrative area and sometimes very tricky. So I should be at ITF. I'll try to track you down. What I need to know from Roman and the rest is, should I continue the discussion on the I2NSF list, or should I go to IPsec.me?
Oh, sorry.
Like ME chair is here.
sorry, Linda, you were saying?
I said,
I'm not hearing you, Roman.
No, sorry, I thought Linda was saying something, so I was giving her the floor if she wanted to have the floor. Oh, yes.
Rocco, can you?
Yes, I can hear you, Joab. That's why. So a couple of comments regarding the. What I can say is I agree with Paul's view about using RFC as it is, because to me, basically we have two NSF, both are BGP routers. That's fine. You can use both models. I don't see at the first sight without any additional detail any need to extend or to change that, because in the end you need to apply a security association between two endpoints, and that's fine. We can use the RFC 9061. Regarding Diego's comment, my opinion there is, if two BGP routers belongs to two different domains, then we are talking about two different security controllers managing two different BGP routers. But then here, what we are saying is we need something for the east-west interface between both security controllers to finally install something in the BGP. But the northbound interface the southbound interface defined in the RFC 9061 can be used directly. That's my opinion, and I agree with Paul's view.
This is Diego, Rafa. This is why I was saying you knew much better than me. That's a very good idea. Sorry for nothing. I'm feeling bad for not thinking about that. Well, and that would imply that we would develop an east-west interface for 9061. Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But it's something. That's something, an interface between controllers, in my opinion. If both BGP routers are under a different security controller.
Different security controller, it is likely, Rafael, that they each would have their unique I2NSF function inside of their system. It might be a third case, which I didn't introduce, which is there's a route server, in which case there are three players. But I get the point that the I2NSF server needs to be in the security domain. In the case of the route server, that might be three, but I see the point. I think, Rafael, what I'll do is work through the examples I had done and send them to you, and copy send them on the list and copy it and make sure that we've got the right concept on that. And if I'm not bugging you guys too much, that would be helpful. Thanks.
So Sue, this is Roman Dinado as AD. You asked me kind of a question. So first, we're over time, so we probably need to stop. But kind of quickly, I'm struggling to understand why this would be the appropriate working group to continue doing additional modeling on IPsec or BGP things, given that the one IPsec document we did was already on the bubble of the charter, and I only approved it because for expediency, since we were so far along, and if we were doing it from the beginning, we would not have done it in this working group because it is out of scope for the current charter. Over.
So Yavnir, also co-chair of IPsec-ME. The IPsec-ME working group looked at that draft that led to 1961 and rejected it. We didn't want to do it, so that's why it ended up here.
So Yoav, I'm sorry, was that and Roman, was that a no? Go find IPsec-ME? Is that the direction? I'm fine with either one. I just want to get the answer.
And it's always possible to bring it back to IPsec-ME and ask again, but so far we've never done really IPsec policy. we always assume that it's up to the user to make the configurations match. And defining this east-west model here means that we're somewhere, somehow negotiating between the controllers and coming up with a cohesive policy. And that's a difficult thing that IPsec has never done.
Amount of time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So we are running out of time. Maybe we can continue on a mailing list about rechartering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. The same